Everybody enjoying Drupal camp so far? Ready? Are you playing the bingo game? I should get my own bingo cards. Every time Craig screws up a government acronym, you get a point. Because I'm going to do that. Alright, so you've been told before this session is being recorded. You'll be able to look at them online later. And just so you know, for privacy reasons, etc., if you have a question, that's great, but your voice will be recorded. So this presentation is a practical guide for transitioning sites to Drupal with the new GCDS design system. I must have been drinking when I came up with that one. That's a long one. So a little bit about myself. My name is Craig. I'm a project coordinator at OpenPlus. I focus a lot on user experience, teach at Algonquin in addition to my work in OpenPlus. And I'm a big advocate of open source in the public service. And I think that's really important now because if you go with open source, you're looking at made in Canada by Canadians for Canadians. You can host in Canada. There is no international corporate overlord who controls your software. And when I'm not working on Drupal projects, teaching UX design, doing all that stuff, I like to garden. And on nice days, I get to go work in the garden. So a little bit about OpenPlus. I'm not going to read this whole slide off to you. You can do that yourself later on. But we have a lot of background working with government, and we're very engaged in the Drupal community. We've got core contributors, we've got a web form maintainer on staff. We've done a lot of work contributing to Drupal with the government of Canada. We do a lot of work with Drupal WXT, which is Web Experience Toolkit in Drupal. GC Cloud, that's our harvesting platform for migrating sites into Drupal, and it works for all kinds of stuff. This would be amazing. And we're also working on GC Drupal, which is the implementation of the GC design system in Drupal. More on that later. That's what the whole project's about, so won't dwell too much on that. Just a little bit about this session. I'll give you an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk a little bit about GCDS, not a lot. There's we did a presentation last year that you can refer to for Drupal and GCDS, and talk to CDS folks about the design system itself. I really want to focus this session for content creators and editors. So we're going to be looking at what's the editing experience like using GCDS and Drupal for content contributors. I'm going to be demonstrating the interface for that. Another important thing is transitioning from WET to GCDS. And if I get time and all that, so we've got a little bit of the sort of admin stuff, how we put all this together. So first, you may have seen this before. It's stolen from the CDS website. These are some of the tools that CDS works on. GC Notify, we've been using that for a number of years now. And my colleague Sang has a presentation on that, I think this afternoon, so I can encourage you to check that out. GC Forms, we're working on getting that to Drupal. GC Sign-In, we're rolling that out now for a consultations project we're working on. And of course, GC Design System, which is why we're all here, right? So the GC Design System was built by CDS. We had nothing to do with the building of it. And how it's different than a lot of other design systems we've worked with is it uses HTML components. And that's really nice. In a nutshell, what it does is it ensures consistency across all sites where it's used because they're centrally managed. And because they're centrally managed by experts who know how to make these things, you can be assured they've been tested for usability, accessibility, all that stuff. And I really like that centrally managed piece. A couple of weeks ago, they came with a new component they're upgrading all the time. It was an icon component. I walk into work, I turn my computer on, fire up my dev environment, and bang, I've got all the new icons. I didn't have to do anything. It was great. I'll just talk a bit about our journey with GCDS and Drupal. We started about a year ago. And at the time when GCDS came out, we started prototyping a bit in Drupal, did a little bit of work in Angular to see how it worked, just pasting in code snippets from the storybook on the GCDS website. And we presented on our work at GCDS at Drupal Camp last year, it was in August or so. And at that time, we committed to releasing a Drupal theme that used GCDS. And that's up on Drupal.org right now. I'd encourage you to go, try it out on your projects. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. And I'm proud to say in 2025 this year, we're launching 2 sites that use GCDS. We've got a consultations platform for Transport Canada, and NSERC is migrating their whole site into Drupal using the GCDS theme. A little about GC Drupal. We've got this up on Drupal.org. It's a theme. Now, for those of you who are used to working with, anybody here use the Web Experience Toolkit Drupal before? Okay, so this works a bit different. When you use WXT, Drupal WXT, you've got a lot of configurations, there's some modules, there's some functionality that comes with it. This is just a theme. When you install this theme, what you get is you get the GC header, you get the GC footer. All the GCDS components are Drupal single directory components. For more what that means, go check out the video last year from GCDrupal.ca. I'm not going to go into what single directory components are and all that sort of thing right now, but they're all in there. Out of the box, you can start working with the components in Twig, or also we found UI Suite is really useful for working with these. I'll show you then how we use that. So migrating NSERC, the demos I'm going to show you today are from the NSERC project. It's under development, so some of this stuff looks a little dodgy, but we're working on it. And it's an interesting project because they've been around a long time, and they've got some, might be recognized this. They got some things look like that, that's CLF2. We've got some web, we've got a bunch of stuff, and our job is to migrate it all into Drupal. And so, whenever you do these migration projects, you're architecting at the same time. I don't think I've ever been involved in a project with just straight migration, you get the same thing in Drupal. So you architect as you go, Agile is great for that. So we sat and we talked, well, who works with content on these sites? And we've got site contributors, and that's like 90% of the content on a website. That's news releases, reports, blobs of text like this. You might have some images, tables, stuff like that. And how do we make things easy for contributors to use? As well as site managers. If you're a site manager, you've got more complex stuff you need to deal with. You've got to do, you might be working on landing pages, topic pages, that sort of thing. And how do we make things easy for contributors, site managers to do their job? So we came up with some authoring principles, we'll call them. One is automation wherever possible. If there's a way we can make it work for the user to do a thing without the user having to do anything at all, we take that approach. And I'll show you an example of how we're doing that. So automatically we'll convert things to GCDS components, if that's an option. If it's not an option, there's some components that have more properties, and you have to make some decisions. So if you're authoring a component, we set up predefined defaults for you. For instance, a lot of times you're creating a container, you're going to want the same padding over and over and over and over. So that's preset. If you do have to make some choices, we use terminology that's a bit more user-friendly. One thing I liked about using the storybook at GCDS on the design system website is, particularly I do a lot of theming design kind of work, and I like how they have properties that are very granular. Like if you want to set the proximity things, that's padding margins. They've got numbers from 75 up to 900 and everything in between. That gives you a lot of control. But I'm not sure that for a content creator whose job is just to write media releases or whatever, I'm not sure they're going to know what M500 means. So we've taken some, simplified those choices. We use words like small, medium, large. We map those to the GCDS properties. And then for site managers, That's more complex. You might be getting into grids and fancy layouts and background colors and all that sort of thing. So for people with that role, we look at building things like Lego. There's a bunch of GCDS really well component driven, so you duplicate that in Drupal, so you can start building up these more complex layouts a piece at a time, and in some cases, you can embed components inside other components. All of that's fine and dandy, except we also need to look at how we transition this. There's thousands, maybe millions of government pages out there using WET. And when you do a migration, there's always going to be some manual work, but you want to keep that minimal. And we want to keep that minimal because it's just too many pages, there's not enough time to update them all. So they have to look decent when you migrate them. The other thing is, I missed a point here. GCDS doesn't yet have full parity with WET. So things like data tables, there's a few other things, they're still coming. GCDS is being developed all the time. There's a newsletter, you can go to the site and sign up, you'll plug that, so check that out. But there's not quite that parity. So sometimes you might have to use WET because there's not yet a GCDS equivalent to it. I'm going to demo to you a few things. I hope I got time to do that. How are we doing here? I cut a lot of these short. I'm going to demo for content creators. We're going to create a report with images and tables, the typical thing that a content creator would do. For site managers, we're going to look at creating some rich pages. How do we do that transition? Moving from WET to GCDS, and I guess if your GCDS fails you, that begin. And for site administrators, I'm just going to show you how we've implemented some of this. And there'll be questions at the end. Okay. So this is a fairly common scenario. A site creator, you're a content creator, and somebody comes and says, okay, we've got to get this report online. And you get a Word document, you get a spreadsheet, and you get an image. We're going to take these three things and turn it into a report. Let me, okay, there we go. So this is a pretty common looking Word document. You've got some, fancy word styling in here. I've got some footers, I've got comments on the side. So your instinct when you're presented with this sort of thing is going to be copy and paste the whole works and stick it into Drupal. You're going to want to just paste in and see what happens. I'm going to go create a report content, right? And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you by default what happens when you do this. Has anybody done this before, paste a Word document into Drupal? Work out well for you? No? Well, you'll like this. So this is what happens. I've got just my Word document, and you'll see I've got all my stylings came in. I don't know if you caught the bottom. There's my comments are down there. You usually don't want to publish your comments in a Word document to public. And all this stuff you see in red, this is what Word is dropping into the document. This is Word-specific stuff. It doesn't add anything to the site. It can impede your content and your code, your HTML. So I'm just going to switch this over to what our default is. I'm going to paste in the exact same document. So you'll see first thing, all the word styles are gone. And my comments are gone. All that ugly code in the source view is gone. And we're using a module where you can use regex filters to clean this up. It's from the government of Ontario, I think, made that module. So there's always some manual cleanup to do. So I got to, move my title around. I got that from the Word document. The other thing that happens when you don't see it is Word will tend to make all your headings H1s. This converts those all to H2s automatically for you because usually you only want the H1 to be the top of the page. I look at this interim report. Well, that's going to be a notice. And this is where GCDS comes in at this point. I want to turn this into a notice, and GCDS is a component for notices. So go in here, we're using paragraph embed for this. Give it a label, so it's an administrative label, so I can find it again. And I fill out these properties. And I use props and properties kind of interchangeably here. Okay, there we go. And where these properties come from. And this is GCDS storybook page here. You go look at the code. And I go to these properties that you see here. This is what we're using in Drupal. We're just mapping these fields in Drupal to the GCDS properties. That way, when GCDS updates anything, it's the same fields, you're going to get those updates. Should be an in folder, English. And now one thing I'll point out here is this block you see. One of the issues we've come across is components can't render inside CK editor. For those who don't know, CK editor, that's that text box you're looking at. They'll render. So we've got this block here. It just tells you something's there. It will tell you the name of your component you're installing, what type of component it is. If you double click on that, it'll open up. You'll get your properties. You can change your content as needed. So I've got my index there. I'm working through my report. There's a few other things I need to do. One thing I'm going to do is down at the bottom here. Let's scrub through this a bit. There we go. I've got the footnotes, so they copied over. So you're going to want to make these into proper Drupal footnotes. That's just a module. We didn't make anything special here. Speed through those. And by doing this, this means if I update anything, it's going to update all within CK. And the reason I'm showing you this, I'll get to it later. I go back to my report, and I've got this aside. It looks like a column, or you want to call it. So I've got to address that. And again, back to my components here. Now, I just want to talk about this one for a second. What we've done is, remember I mentioned that GCDS is always under development and changing. There's some cases where GCDS does not have the component we need. In this case, a banner, like a colored background. So what we do is we make a custom component, but we use the GCDS design tokens. You can get those from their site. There's almost no custom CSS in this project. We just use the GCDS design tokens. That way, we can get whatever updates. If they change the blue background color, we're just going to inherit that. Again, some props. And you can see using the sort of common language again. I create and place this. Again, it's embedded. Then I've got my image I got to deal with. Anybody who's used Drupal before has probably seen this one a million times. Just go find my image. Stick that in there. And I'll just talk about this for a second. If you haven't seen this sort of thing before, this is common Drupal. We can set image styles. And this allows you to sort of control inline the formatting of your images. And these are all responsive, accessible, so on and so forth. And table of contents, that's done with a token. You just type in TOC, again, module. We've done some customization on it. And what the table of contents is going to do is it's going to go through the whole document. It's going to grab all my headings and generate a table of contents for me. This is looking pretty good. I got everything done. The only thing I'm missing is I need to get my table in the bottom. And again, this part's not GCDS specific. I'm just showing you how this page gets constructed because you don't do everything in a vacuum. Go down here. This is pretty straightforward. I go back up to my paragraph embeds. And all I need to do to get that table going is upload the spreadsheet. And I'm going to give it a title, heading, sorry. And that's it. You can see here where it grabbed the GCDS usage heading. It added that. Now what's really cool about this is remember I talked about the automation? If you look at this, I didn't do anything with the headings. I just pasted them from Word. And they automatically became GCDS headings for me. And we've done that with any HTML elements that will work. We've done it with links, we've done it with details. And another heading. Let's go look at a couple more of these. See, data tables. Oh yeah, the link. I want to show you the link. So again, all I did here for my table is I uploaded a spreadsheet. And if I take a look at this, oops, hang on. Okay, so that became a GCDS link without me doing anything. It was just generated. And it knows it's a download link. I get the little download icon. So again, automating, keeping things easy. And I'm going to scrub forward a little bit here. Go to my notice. Okay, links again, GCDS links. I'm just going backwards, aren't I? Okay, so here, you can see the notice. And this is the component we've added. We set our own property. We did what kind of notice are you? What's your heading level? But it's generated the GCDS component for us. And that's Drupal single directory components doing that one. So that's, I think, all I got on the on adding content. I'm going to move on to for site managers, which behaves a bit differently. What I'm going to do is this is the GCDS Design System homepage. And we're going to duplicate this using components in Drupal. Now what I'm going to do is I do have part of this built out. I did have a video building the whole thing, but it took about 25 minutes, which is too long for video. They don't give me that much time. So I've left a few parts out intentionally to show you how it works. Some stuff we've done custom, some stuff is just straight GCDS. So here I'm going to add that, we call it a hero page title. That's pretty common on a lot of government sites. And I can add in my own custom background image. I'll just show you how that works. And let's go, there we go. We got everything, collapse that. We got to drag it up, so it's just drag and drop. Now you can see what you're looking at here is these are all the different paragraphs or components I've already added. And I'll save this. And there we go. Sec here, there was something going on, I'll show you. So it added my background, so that was pretty easy, right? Just give it a title. I'm sorry, you don't give it a title, get the page title, good bit of content, attach an image, and you're done. You'll see though, I do have the page title showing up and the title of my hero banner. I don't want that. So how do you get rid of that? We just, we can hook that out, get rid of that page title, and I'm going to go remove that background image and just use a default because I am trying to duplicate GCDS. Here we go, I've got their image and that page title is gone. Well, this is a neat little accessibility tool. I forget what that's called. Who knows what that is? I forget. Editorially, right, that's the one. I'm kind of ignoring in this demo, but I shouldn't be. But it's good because it finds there's just a page. So, oh, I missed a bit there. I need to add this card. Just back up a little bit. So, I'm missing this notice card. So I need to add that. So let's take a look at how I would do that. I go find my grid, and I'm going to show the grid properties. So I can configure all these different grid settings in here, whether it's going to be, this one's, we've extended the GCDS grid a bit to add some extra properties that aren't currently available. So I can pick what tag I want, my colors. You can pick how many, this is in the back, this is all responsive. Just pick how many columns you want on what side screen, and it'll build that out for you. Use equal row heights, that works well with cards, looks nice. And I added GCDS card. Now this, wherever you see that, and the way we've done this, we've got that bracket GCDS, that means you're just using the straight GCDS component. If it's got GCDS EXT, that means you've extended it. So these properties, they're all GCDS card properties. Go grab the image. And again, I just want to show you where the properties are on GCDS. It's important to keep referring back to this just so you can see how the mapping works. That's all done. I'll collapse that. Reorder them. So, we're pretty much done. This is, the rest of this is all going to go the same way. Make a grid, add your content. You can add text, areas, cars, whatever you need. I do have something else I got to do. This is interesting. When, in the process of doing this, GCDS released a icon component. And we don't yet have any sort of UI or anything for that. So that change some of these bullets around. I'm going to show you the icon in a moment. But what you're looking at here is this is in CK. You click on the link, and then you can set the GCDS link properties right here. We want this to be a secondary. And now on the source page, they do have a offsite link. Now when I set the properties, it says it's a button, so it's not registered. So we gotta get that link in there somehow, that icon in there somehow. What you can do is if there's not a component, if there's in Drupal yet, if the theme doesn't support it, you can always go over here, go to their storybook. I just look for the links, the icon style I want external, copy that code. I can just go paste that right into Drupal, and because we're using the GCDS libraries, they're just going to work. And there we go. Turn off those warnings. And voila, that's it. So you can just we're using paragraphs to do this. You keep building until you've got the layout you want. And again, all GCDS components. This is a GCDS card. All the headings, again, that was the automatic bit again. Those headings just became headings. Didn't have to be props or anything to say the GCDS headings. And that's it for that one. How am I doing for time? Not too bad. I have 2 more videos I'll try to storm through. So, working with WET and GCDS. Okay, so I've got a sample page I'm just going to show you here. And these are all WET styles. You probably recognize these if you've worked with WET before. One thing I will point out is if you look at these detail elements down here, those aren't WET. They're GCDS. And that's happening again because of that automation step I talked about. There we go, it's the GCDS details. And what's happening is if GCDS is available, it's going to prefer GCDS even if there's WET stuff on the page. And what we've done is we've set this up so it's very easy to turn this on and off. You just click a box, use WET. This is on a per node or per page basis. You can turn WET on and off. And all that's doing in the back is just a voice saying if this is selected, go load the WET libraries, otherwise ignore it. So I turn it off, all those WET styles are gone. Since I did this demo, we've got data tables working now, so if you turn off WET, the tables look fine. So you can see it, it doesn't look great. So this you'd probably want to leave as WET if you were using it, this real site. And you can toggle this on and off, like there's nothing special, just turn it on, turn it off. And the way we set this up is it's off by default. When you create content, the idea is you create your new content using GCDS. When we do migrations, everything comes in with WET enabled. That's because we need to solve that problem of, what happens if people are, you don't want to have people having to manually update a whole bunch of content that's migrated in. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to keep track, where am I here? You want to keep track of what you have that's WET enabled and what's not, or sorry, GCDS enabled and what's not. So we've got this report, and this tells me right here, I've got 79 pages that are using GCDS and 112 are WXT transitional. We're calling it transitional because our hope is that people move from WXT to GCDS. Little chart, they're always nice. I'm just going to speed up a little bit here. You can also get this by content type. So I see that news has got a whole lot of WET in there. That's because we did a test migration. We migrated all those in by default. They're WXT, WET. And then this is just a view. You're seeing like what this is a list of every page on the site that's still using WET. I can filter this by content type. Again, I'm going to speed this up a bit. So what I'm going to do here is I've opened up 3 different news pages. If I was doing this for really test more pages, but I take a look at these and I see, you know what? A lot of this stuff, there's nothing WET specific in here. This would all work in GCDS. And this is one of the things that's cool with Drupal, is it's really great at working with content. So I'm going to go over here, not wrong filter. And I'm going to filter for all my news articles. Select all of them. And you can, in Drupal, you can bulk change field values. So I'm going to select all my news articles. And with those, I'm going to change the use WXT field. I can turn this on. I can turn this off. I'm going to turn off. I apply that. And done. Let's go look at my report now. So I can see I've now got 127 pages that are using GCDS and 64 using WXT. And all my news, over there in the end there, I've got to work on the ordering for this view, but all my news is now using GCDS. There's no need for it to be WET, so I just flip it over. And that's very handy for, you know, you can still use WET, you can move to GCDS, and you can track where you are. So we get to the next one here. So, a little bit how we did this. All the components that we're using so far, we're using paragraphs. It's a fairly easy way to do it. Because of paragraphs, we can use entity embeds and CK editor. We can, for those who don't know what that is, the button I pressed where I said, hey, go make me a notice, or go, give me a banner. Those are that's an embed component. We also use it in fields. That's how the layout page worked. I showed you for the more complex layout. And this is pretty straightforward. All we've done is we've just taken our regular Drupal fields. Anybody's worked with Drupal has seen this a million times. And we just set the values. And these values map back to the components that we set up with the single directory components in Twig. And that's in the GCDS theme, so you could use that. And what am I looking at here? So how this gets implemented, right here I'm going to show you how to do it in the UI. You can of course do this in Twig and usual theming mechanisms, preprocessors and things. But you can also do it with Layout Builder. And we do that using a module called UI Suite. And what UI Suite does is it's going through our single directory component directory, looking for all directory components, and it makes those properties available in Drupal. It'll work with views, it works with Layout Builder, blocks, that sort of thing. So I just got rid of the default. And when I get down to this area, what you see there on the left, this is the single directory components as the UI Suite sees them. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to find my notice component, my GCDS notice, and I start assigning properties. So you've got different options here. You can pick data from a field. So what's happening is you've got the field in the paragraph, user selects the value in the field, you say, okay, go get the value from this field, that's what shows up when you render the notice. Now I'll speed up a little bit through these, I think. Give you a bit more for this because you don't need to watch it fill all these fields. And you can do tokens and stuff in there as well. And then what we need to do is the components use properties, but they also have slots. And the slot, think of that as like the content. So you pick the slot, I'm going to get my message field. This is typical Drupal block configuration. And there you go. So what happens now is if I were to generate this, if I were to use this notice, it goes and it gets the properties that I've set in the fields. It goes and looks at a single directory, goes, okay, how do I display those properties? That goes and reads the GCDS libraries, and it renders the notice. And that's all I've got on this one. For videos, just wait a sec here. Now, we do have some stuff we still want to do. We're going to continue updating single directory components to align with any changes in GCDS. So if any properties change, new components come out, that sort of thing, we update single directory components. They go up to the GCDS theme that you get on Drupal.org. This is still interactive development, and we found with some of the components that we've done, particularly our custom components, there's a lot of overlap, so we've got to go through and refine some of those to reduce, you don't have to do the same thing twice. One thing that would be very useful to happen at some point in the future is right now the components can't render in CK Editor. CK Editor just doesn't know about components. So it'd be nice to be able to see that. Drupal's coming out with Experience Builder, which works with single directory components. Supposed to come out, anybody knows that next year is supposed to be out? Experience Builder?
7 months.
7 months? That's specific. Okay, so we want to see what happens in Experience Builder, because that could have lent a lot of power to building sites that sort of single directory components. It was so fortunate that SDCs came out about the same time as GCDS. And of course, community involvement. We've got an alpha of the theme up on Drupal.org. You can get more information at gcdrupal.ca. It'd be really great that people start using the theme on their projects, maybe contributing back, that sort of thing. Feedback would help. Some challenge that we've come across, I mentioned already, GCDS won't render in CK Editor. We've got that sort of embedded block thing. That works, but it's not ideal. What we'd really like is for the user to be able to see what's going to get published. This is, what this is, I was just curious. I flipped over, like we usually use the admin theme for admin content. What happened is I just flipped the theme and said, okay, use the site theme for content. And it looks pretty good. Those are all GCDS form elements. But it's not too bad for just flipping the theme over and not doing any work. But the problem is, if you look in the body field there, I don't have CK Editor. So what's happening is CK is looking for a text area and it's not finding it because it doesn't know what a custom HTML component is. And so that would, there might be an easy workaround on this. I don't know, we haven't looked, but that's the problem we're having right now in the blocks. Also, another thing we're running into is when we embed these components into CK Editor, those things that work within CK, table of contents, footnotes, that sort of thing, it's not recognizing the content that's in those blocks. So that's something else that one way that needs to get resolved. And that's all I got. And I've got 5 minutes left for questions. Would you have anything? That boring or that good? Nothing?
It's very nice.
Pardon me?
Very nice. It's excellent. I'll give this a try. It's a good way to separate the content from the display layer and imagine the basic components. So yeah, very nice solution.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Okay, I guess we're done 5 minutes early then. Thank you for coming. Did you have?
I was going to say, we had some thoughts about the editorially, and I was wondering, you didn't go into that, but it'd be interesting to go off and sort of find out how are you finding editorially within the Government Canada context?
I haven't really dove into that yet.
That's why I put you on the spot to ask that. No worries. I'm happy to see your views with them.
Pardon me?
I'm happy to see your views.
Yeah, it is really handy. There's, of course, as happens with accessibility, it doesn't catch everything. You have to look, like we were looking through fastest. You're building a search page. It didn't see what was wrong in the fastest at all. because they were so badly done.
Yeah.
So we had to fix those. But that's an accessibility thing. You guys got to check stuff manually. Yes, in the back of the question. Are you just stretching? Yes.
Are you considering layouts, paragraphs, or paragraphs layouts module instead of layout builder for this? Because I think it gives you like a more visual editing experience where you can actually see the components rendered.
Yeah, we have looked at a bit of that stuff. Not a lot though. Right now this is still under development. And our main thing was to get the single directory components using GCDS and doing it in the UI in Drupal. So what's that module called again? Sorry?
I think it's called layout paragraphs.
Yeah, I will look at that. We looked into a bunch of them, but I will make a note of that and I'll definitely look into some better record it. Anything else? Okay, that's it. Thank you for coming. And go check out Sting's session this afternoon on GC Notified.